Welcome into the inaugural Campus Connection. I'm your host, Drew Martin, alongside BMOC, Big Man on Campus, Jeff Nadeau. Jeff, welcome. How you doing today, buddy?
Good to be with you, Drew. Excited to get into college football today.
Absolutely. This is the Campus Connection. Jeff and I will be going over all of the G5 conferences, maybe some of the Power 5 if we have time before football starts, just kind of previewing the conference. We're actually going to go through each and every team, so it's a good exercise. I am excited. I know Big Man on Campus is. Big Man, you want to start us off with maybe overall thoughts of the Sunbelt Conference?
Yeah, Drew, I know you and I spent a lot of time in the Sunbelt Conference before the year and during the year. It's a conference chock full of value and, some really good football teams. Some teams that have won bowl games over the years. App State and Troy was really impressive last year. I'm excited about some of these teams. You have a couple teams, you talk about Idaho. They're going to be heading out of FBS. You got some exciting teams as well. So I'm looking forward to trying to find some value here team by team.
Yeah, interesting things going on in the Sun Belt. Idaho and New Mexico State, this is their last year in the Sun Belt, whereas Coastal Carolina is actually entering the Sun Belt this year. They're in their transition year. So a lot of movement going on, but you want to just get right into the teams?
Let's jump into it, Drew. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. We'll just go down in alphabetical order. And actually, the top two teams here in alphabetical order are I would say two of the top three teams in the conference in App State and Arkansas State. So we'll start off with Appalachian State, the Mountaineers. They're kind of new to the Sun Belt, actually. Just made the jump with Georgia Southern a few years back. Scott Scatterfield, in his fifth year here, he's actually an App State graduate as well. That's probably some of the reason he's still with Appalachian State. This is a team that finished 10-3 last year, 10 wins on the season, double-digit wins. They're returning 7 on the offense. Looks like, depending on the numbers you look at, about 7 on the defense. Big Man, the initial thoughts I'm looking at, their bye weeks are nicely placed, September 30th and then again on November 18th. That usually helps these smaller teams out a lot, giving them the extra week preparation and rest spaced out in the season. I think that helps. But, they start off with a tough one in Athens, Georgia, at Georgia. So what are your overall thoughts on Appalachian State, Big Man?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Georgia, which is going to be an interesting game right away. Last year faced Tennessee, Appalachian State, right out of the gate, really gave them a pretty good game. I think they're going to give Georgia a pretty good game as well. This is a team, App State, that can go in and really scare a big program like a Georgia. I like what Satterfield's done here at Appalachian State, and I actually liken it to what I think Tim Lester will do at Western Michigan, a guy that's homegrown. He went to the school. I think he's really going to build a culture, and I think Satterfield's done that. You look at this team. Taylor Lamb leads the charge, 27 wins as a quarterback. They bring back Jalen Moore, the Sunbelt Offensive Player of the Year. A strong defense, Drew, as well, with a good offensive line. You look at defensively last year, 2.1 plays a game of 20 pass yards or less. That's third in the country. Really like what I'm seeing from App State. Definitely looked like one of the favorites.
Absolutely, and they got a senior quarterback in Taylor Lamb. He played well last year, didn't turn it over too much, kind of, really guided the offense very well. What are you thinking as far as maybe bet on opportunities or fade opportunities? I see this at Texas State, September 16th. Considering they will, they are a double-digit underdog to Georgia, so likely being 1-1 going into that game against, one of the bottom feeders in the Sun Belt. I know it's kind of a tough travel spot, but I could see App State really putting it on Texas State in the third week. That's a game I've kind of circled, Big Man, as looking to bet on them.
Yeah.
Have you circled any games?
Yeah, they do avoid Arkansas State, which is good. Definitely one of those teams that they really don't want to play. They also don't play Troy either. So this schedule really sets up as far as for them to really have some favorable chances. Drew, I got to be honest. I'm going to look at them in week 1 against Georgia. I think this team is going to have the ability to maybe knock off a program or even stay within the number. The problem I have, Drew, with Appalachian State is they're not built to cover big numbers. They struggled last year covering big numbers. Anything over like 24, I'm going to be skeptical to lay it with them. They're a team that will take their foot off the gas. They're a great defense. And a lot of the time, they can go up 31-7 and coast, and they're not too worried about spread. So against a Texas State, it's all going to be about the number for me.
Okay, and you mentioned Arkansas State. Are we ready to go on to the Red Wolves, or you got anything else left on App State?
Yeah, on App State, I am going to be very interested. They're going to be a team that I'm interested. The problem, Drew, is there's no value in them to win this conference. They're laying 250 to win this conference. From a game-by-game perspective, I'm going to be looking to bet them. But from a future standpoint, a win total standpoint, there's not any value for me on them.
I'm not much of a futures guy, big man, but did you say they're minus 250 to win the Sunbelt?
Yes, at 5 times, I actually think they're minus 260, I believe.
For App State?
Yes.
That is ridiculous. That's a terrible, terrible number. I don't know who would actually lay that. Considering Arkansas State and Troy, the winner of that matchup is likely, I would put them on the same level as App State. Not to mention it's a 12-team conference. So I would
agree with you. And here's one problem you're going to have with some of these smaller conferences. They are notorious for doing this in the Mountain West, of listing Boise State considerably as a big favorite every year, and they were just getting crushed every year with San Diego State, and it looks like it's going to happen again in this conference. I don't understand the thinking pattern behind putting Appalachian State at such a heavy favorite. This doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, but talking about moving down the alphabetical order here in the conference, Arkansas State, the Red Wolves, they finished last year 8-5, and if you remember, they started off 0-4, losing to Toledo, Auburn, Utah State, and then the FCS school Central Arkansas. I actually lost money on that game. They lost 28-23, and then pretty much rattled off. They won all but one game the rest of the season. Justice Hansen, the transfer, comes in. I believe he transferred over from Oklahoma. He can really throw it. He's pretty good, and obviously they're going to have a good defensive line. Arkansas State does every year. Pretty much the pinnacle of recruiting in the Sun Belt. They got a tough week 1 and week 2 game at Nebraska, and then playing Miami at home there in Jonesboro, Arkansas. What are you thinking of Arkansas State this year, big man?
Yeah, they were really erratic last year offensively, Drew. You mentioned their start 0-4. The Central Arkansas loss was really the bottom part of their season, but then they went on a really nice run, ended up making a bowl game, and got the job done in the Cure Bowl against your UCF boys, who I know you're a big fan of. They were really good defensively last year. The problem we had with Arkansas State, Drew, is Justice Hansen struggled a little bit at quarterback. Warren Wan was a little bit undersized, but I think another year, I think this offense has nowhere to go but up. I think they're going to be pretty similar to what they were last year. Problem I have with Ark State is totally new offensive line, 5 starters. They do avoid App State, but look, I got to be honest. I don't think they're as good as App State or Troy. They're going to be a good team, but I think they're 6-7. I don't think they're going to challenge this conference. I really don't.
Yeah, and it looks like they're doing their 4 out-of-conference games all in the beginning of the season. They got at Nebraska, Miami, Arkansas, Pine Bluff, and then at SMU. So I could see them going 2-2, maybe even 1-3 out of conference. Then they have 2 good bye weeks as well, September 30th and then a little bit later, November 4th. And a really interesting game, the last game of the season, which potentially could be the Sunbelt Championship game. They host Troy. Right. But Blake Anderson, he has been one of the better coaches in the Sun Belt. Last year, 8-5, his 4th year here. I just think they're one of the more talented teams in the conference. It's just a matter of if they can put it all together, big man.
Yeah, and again, as far as from a point spread perspective, I think early on, it's probably going to be similar to what it was last year. Do I think they'll lose to Arkansas Pine Bluff? No, but they're a Sunbelt team. That's what they are. They're not going to – I don't think they're going to be a national type of team that can go in and beat teams like App State. They just don't have the playmakers to do that. But a very good defense. It's all going to be about their offensive line. They have a totally new line. And for a team that had trouble scoring points last year, you have a totally new line. I think they're going to struggle a little bit more. are they going to have automatic wins against UL Monroe and Texas State? Sure, but to say they can win this conference, a little bit of a stretch.
Okay, well, anything left on Arkansas State before we move on?
No, I'm pretty much I don't have much on Ark State. I'm just not really that enamored by them.
Okay, well, let's move on to the newest member of FBS, Coastal Carolina, and they actually go by the Chanticleers, correct, big man?
Chanticleers, yes.
Chanticleers, okay, I'm pronouncing that right. Yeah, that's a good one there. And actually, they're having some coaching issues. Joe, what's his name, Moglia?
Joe Moglia, yep.
Yeah, Moglia. He has actually an interesting story behind him. I believe he was the president of TD Ameritrade, made a bunch of money, then got back into coaching. He's actually a really interesting guy if you listen to him, but he got sick, a lung issue of some sort, so he's not going to be coaching the team this year. They're going to have one of the assistant coaches coaching it, actually, and it looks like they start off September 2nd against UMass, then have their first bye week, and then play at UAB. So it's an interesting schedule for them. Obviously, they're going to have a tough time in the transition. This isn't a program like App State or Georgia Southern, where they were FCS powerhouses, then moving into FBS and having, moderate success right away. Georgia Southern, hell, they pretty much won the Sunbelt in their first year, but Coastal Carolina is going to be a little bit different. They didn't dominate FCS for the years like Georgia Southern and App State did. But big man, are you in agreement they're going to struggle this year?
I don't think they're going to be as bad as UL Monroe and Texas State. No, I don't. Are they going to struggle? Yeah. I mean, if they're making the jump from into FBS here, but again, Drew, you look at last year, if you were to rank them as far as Sagarin rating, they would have been 5th in the Sun Belt. So they were overall pretty good. Problem I have with them is 6 different quarterbacks they started last year. That's 6. And not even counting the quarterback that got injured before the season started. So it would have been 7. They also lost their all-time leading rusher, D'Angelo Henderson. But you look at them. I mean, very good defense, very good linebacking core. If they can figure out how to kind of navigate through a Sunbelt schedule, look, are they going to be bowling? No. But I honestly don't think they're as bad as some of these other teams. You look at early on, I think they're going to start the season 2-0. I really think UMass is bad, and UAB is just as bad. They might even win 3 in a row or 4 in a row. You look at their schedule to start the season, Drew. UMass, UAB, Western Illinois, and UL Monroe. Think if this team can start 4-0 somehow. I don't think it's that hard to believe, Drew.
Yeah, I don't either. And actually, the next game is Georgia State, and it's not like Georgia State's terrible, but they're not going to blow them out like their next 2 likely are. So, yeah, I think you're onto something there.
I really think they're a 4 or 5 win team, honestly. I think they're going to be one of those teams that they're going to play for their coach. They have a really good defense. And you look at over the years in FCS, they really did some good things at that level. I mean, they won a ton of games. They were a good offensive team. They have capable guys come in and play. And it's not like you're entering a conference where there's a ton of teams that are going to crush you every week.
And Jeff, you bring up a good point. And I actually want to go back and somewhat correct myself. I said they're not going to, come into the Sun Belt like the powerhouses that App State and Georgia Southern were at the FCS level, but they actually, you're right, did have success. They went 12-3, 12-2, 9-3, and then just last year 10-2. So they did have sustained success at the FCS level. So you're right. I mean, in the beginning, they could be 4-0. Hell, who knows, 5-0 if the ball bounces their way. So Coastal Carolina could be a sleeper this year.
The problem you have is, Drew, that they can compete for a Sun Belt championship, but they're not bowl eligible due to the NCAA rules. So, again, I think it'd be a really cool thing if they can go out and win some games this year and really kind of build something. Again, who knows what this team would be if they still had their all-time leading rusher. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty fun year for Chanticleer fans. And, look, at the end of the day, if you can win 4 or 5 games to start the season, who wouldn't want that?
Yeah, absolutely. But for the sake of time, we gotta head down the line alphabetically and get into Georgia Southern. We were just talking about them. A pretty much a hell of a program they got there in Statesboro, Georgia. Tyson Summers enters his 2nd year, says he's going to go a little bit more towards the option offense. They kind of left it a little bit last year. They got a tough one to start off on the Plains. They go at Auburn, then host New Hampshire, then get a bye week. So likely looking at 1-1 for Georgia Southern off the bat. But where do you want to start us off with the Eagles here, big man?
Yeah, if you know anything about my college football handicapping, since I've started on SBR, first year I started, Georgia Southern was a really big running maker for me. Love this team. I got to tell you, last year, Drew, they were one of the more disappointing teams in the country to me. I thought Tyson Summers was an absolute dumpster fire, and it's never a good thing, Drew, when your athletic director's already asking what's going on. This team really struggled. You look at last year, 22 starters returning from the year before. Really should have been a team that could have contended. Really struggled, had some issues. They lose Breida, Upshaw, and Ellison this year. Still some good running backs, though, a pretty good defense. They have to bounce back this year, or Tyson Summers is going to have a problem.
Absolutely. He's already on the hot seat. If they don't make a bowl game, I wouldn't be surprised if he's ousted there in Statesboro. But you brought it up. They're going to have a good defense. Their running back, Wesley Fields. He's a hell of a player as well. And their quarterback situation, it looks like it's up in the air. They haven't named anybody, so that's obviously a very important piece of the option offense.
I think what they do, though, there is they do a dual threat. I mean, they did it with Fabian Upshaw and Kevin Ellison. I think they'll do it with Wirtz and Schumann this year. The good thing about them is they always have very good running backs. You mentioned Wesley Fields. They also have L.A. Ramsby, kind of a home run hitter. I think you're 100% right. I think he is very much in the hot seat. He totally abandoned what they did well at Georgia Southern. They're pretty good defensively, but they had major problems moving the football. And Summers has to get to a bowl this year, or he's out at Georgia Southern.
And big man, just real quick, would you be looking to bet on them or fade them week 1 versus Auburn?
I'm going to be looking to fade them. I'm not a fan of until he shows me that they have the ability to run the football and to command that offense. Drew, why should I feel comfortable with them? Last year they had 22 returning players, and they couldn't figure it out. They lose 15 of those coming into this year. I'm not really looking at Georgia Southern as a bet-on team right away, especially against Auburn.
And going from Southern up to Georgia State, Georgia State takes over Turner Field, the old Atlanta Braves stadium there. It actually looks pretty nice from the pictures I've seen there, big man. But Georgia State last year going 3-9, a really disappointing 2016 football season. Sean Elliott takes over for, Trent Miles, who actually was the Sunbelt Coach of the Year not too long ago, and they were in a bowl game. So I never actually really figured out what went on with that coaching change. I thought Trent Miles was a hell of a football coach, but nonetheless, Sean Elliott takes over. I believe he took over at some point late last year, so he just keeps the job for this year. They start off with Tennessee State, then a bye week, and then are going in to be the sacrificial lamb at Penn State. But other than that, the schedule looks to play out pretty, I would say a pretty basic Sunbelt schedule. But are you looking to bet on or against Georgia State this year?
They're a team that I'm kind of looking to see what will happen. I definitely think coming into the year, and for most of the year, they're not going to be a team I'm going to get involved with, Drew. They're one of those teams where in a couple years, I think they're going to be able to do some good things. Sean Elliott was at South Carolina for 7 years. He should have some good luck recruiting down there as far as, you look at his recruiting class coming in, third best recruiting class in this conference. So they're going to be able to win some games down the road. Problem is, they're not going to score any points this year. You have some really good defenses in this conference. They have a totally new stadium to kind of get behind. And I got to tell you, it's not exactly easy filling stadiums like that. The Braves couldn't do it. What makes you think Georgia State's going to be able to do it? I'm very mum on them. They're not going to be a team involved in my portfolio this year.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, they set it up a little bit differently, so the capacity isn't the same. But you're right, the upper decks will definitely not be filled at all.
But you basically need them to win 6 games to cash a future ticket. I just don't know that I see it. They're a poor, boring team with a new coach. Again, they're one of those wait-and-see teams. You're going to hope that Elliott can recruit in South Carolina, but it's not exactly a barren place. There are a lot of other teams grabbing recruits, looking to grab those kind of guys. So, yeah, for me, they're they're 115, 120th in the country. They're just not very good.
Yeah, so they got to get to 6 wins to cash that over/under season win total, correct?
That's a clueless number. They're not going to win. I think they're a 3 or 4 win team. I mean, they'll win. They'll beat Tennessee State, but you look at their out of conference schedule is not exactly easy. I mean, you got to go to Penn State. You got to play Memphis. You also look at in conference. They got to go. They got App State. They got Troy. We mentioned Coastal Carolina. They're a team that's going to struggle to win 4 games, I think.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Yeah, you bring up the Memphis and Penn State. Not to mention Charlotte's a toss-up game, so it's going to be tough for them to make
Charlotte's, a bowl game. Yeah, you're right. Charlotte's on their level, Drew. That's kind of what they are. I don't. You got to figure Idaho's going to be a better football team. They're going to have some stuff to prove this year. I'm just very mum on Georgia State.
Okay, and you bring up Idaho. I guess we're halfway through here on the Sunbelt preview, the Campus Connection, the inaugural Campus Connection. But Idaho,
you like
the Vandals.
That name, Drew?
What's that?
You like that name?
I do.
Campus Connection.
Yeah, that
really rolls off your tongue, doesn't it?
BMOC's imagination, creativity right there at work. But moving to Moscow, Idaho, the Vandals. Looks like they're starting off with Sacramento State, then UNLV, and then at Western Michigan. If Western Michigan isn't, nearly what they were last year, this team could be 3-0 as well. 9-4 last year. Paul Petrino has actually really done well there in Moscow. It's pretty amazing. I mean, he does have the senior quarterback, Matt Linehan, who is, if you haven't been watching Sunbelt football, this kid's really good. He can really toss it around. But, for the first time in a long time, they made a bowl game last year, the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. In one of the more exciting bowl games, if you remember, they beat Colorado State in a high-scoring affair, 61-50. So off of a positive performance there. And, Big Man, what are your thoughts on the Idaho Vandals?
Yeah, Potato Bowl was really an exciting game, 111 points, as you mentioned. And, this is kind of the last hurrah for Idaho. I mean, they're heading to the subdivision here, and, it's kind of bittersweet. They're not a team that I would benchmark as a team that should go to FCS. I don't really see it, but again, it's the decision they're making as a program. It seems like Matt Linehan's been there for 8 years. I mean, this kid's really been able to do some good things in Moscow. It's a tough place to go and play just because of the location. They have a really good dual threat running game with Saunders and Aaron Duckworth. And look, I mean, they have a pretty favorable schedule for the most part. I know you mentioned early on, but you look, they have 6 home games this year, only face 1 Power 5 opponent, which I believe you mentioned is Missouri, which not exactly, just one there. And I don't know. I think they'll have some, kind of a last hurrah type of mentality. A good offense. Problem with them, Drew, I'm going to mention a problem with every team, defensively. I mean, they were terrible last year against the pass. They lose 2 of their starting cornerbacks. They're going to be an exciting team. I would look overs in their games. They're going to be able to put points on the board. I mean, you look at early on, that UNLV, the Western Michigan game, should see some high-scoring games there. I think a bowl is in their grasp. I really do. I think offensively they're good enough to get there.
Yeah, and something to keep in mind, you touched on it a little bit, is the travel spots for some of these Sunbelt teams. This isn't like the Pac-12 teams or the SEC teams. They have a lot tougher travel spots. So there's 2 back-to-back away games. They got at Western Michigan, and then following it up on September 23rd. It's a game I've circled, at USA. That's South Alabama. So that's a lot of travel back-to-back. And then they do it again to end the season at New Mexico State, and then have to travel to Atlanta, Georgia to finish off the season. So those are 2 tough spots there. Might look to fade the Idaho Vandals. But before we get on to the Ragin' Cajuns, anything else on the Vandals, Big Man?
Yeah, they're just going to be a team that I think is going to be exciting to watch. They're not going to be a team that is going to give up 17 points a game. They're going to give up points. They're going to be a team that they're going to play a lot of 44-38 type of games. But they have to get a run game going. That was important. It's important for a lot of teams. They should be able to do it. But you mentioned it's always tough in the Sun Belt with the travel. But we'll see. They'll be exciting to watch.
Okay, and let's move on to the Ragin' Cajuns, the Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns. Mark Hudspeth in his 7th year. He's, overall he's done a great job. I was actually pretty surprised he's still here in Lafayette. But last year, he did not do a very good job coaching this team. I felt that the quarterback they brought in from LSU was not a very good quarterback at all. And when Jordan Davis came in, he played a lot better, but then got hurt, knee injury. But he's slated to be okay and to be the quarterback of the football team this year. They got a great defensive line. They got talent all over the field, I mean, in comparison to the other Sunbelt Conference. But let's see, they got at Tulsa, at Texas A&M the 2nd and 3rd week. So those are 2 tough spots there. Other than that, the schedule, I think, plays out pretty well for the Ragin' Cajuns. So I could see him going bowling this year, big man. Are you in agreement?
No, I am not. I think this is a bad football team. They lose Elijah McGuire, who was their whole offense last year. I agree with you on your point of Hudspeth. I thought he was horrible last year. Jennings, it's good Jennings is gone because he just polluted everywhere he went. I mean, LSU is a mess. UL Lafayette was a mess. And you lose your one good player you had in Elijah McGuire. So for me, no, I think the schedule's tough. I mean, you got to go to Ark State, you got to go to App State, you got to go to A&M, you got to go to Tulsa, who isn't very good, but they're still slightly better than they are. You got to go to Ole Miss, you got to go to Idaho. I think this is a tougher schedule than we're leading on here, Drew, to be honest. And you look at last year, they were 109th offensively, and they lost their best player. I'm not high on UL Lafayette at all. I think this is a bad team. Under 5 is the play, I think.
Okay, yeah, you bring up some great points. And actually, that at Idaho game, the next week, they have a short week and play Texas State on Thursday. I know the Bobcats for Texas State aren't very good, but when you talk about going from Moscow, Idaho, to Lafayette, Louisiana, and then on a short week, they're going to have virtually one practice to prep for Texas State. That will be on a Thursday night, so it will be more of a heavily bet game. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that Texas State game, that Texas State bet right there is one of the better spot plays of the season. I can't believe the Sunbelt let that happen.
It wouldn't surprise me, Drew, if they went 3-9, 4-8 this year. I think UL Lafayette is a bad football team. I mean, are they, UL Monroe or Texas State? No, but I don't think they're much worse. I mean, they're right there. And you're right with that scheduling spot. If Texas State's going to win games, they have to win and win lucky like in games like that. Great point by you. But UL Lafayette, or I guess they're Louisiana now. Doesn't matter. They're still bad.
Yeah, that Louisiana thing. I was surprised by it as well. But, yeah, interesting stuff there on Louisiana Lafayette. But we got to move on.
It's surprising to me that Louisiana would want to take credit for this team. Just leave them UL Lafayette. That way at least you can say, well, it's Lafayette's team. It's not Louisiana's.
Yeah, really, man. But, all right, one of the other teams that's leaving the conference, New Mexico State Aggies, Doug Martin, his 5th year here. I'm surprised he actually made it this long. And this is their last year in the Sun Belt, probably their last chance for a while at a bowl game. They do have a good quarterback in Tyler Rogers, and obviously Larry Rose, the running back. He likely has an NFL future. So this team should be able to put up some points, big man. Do you think they make a bowl game this year?
No, I don't. You look at Martin, 10-38 in 4 years. You're not related to this guy, are you? I'm
not, no. Not that I know of, anyway.
Good. I wouldn't take credit for it. He was 39-91 in his 11-year career as a coach. He's just not a very good coach. But again, you can't really fault him. I mean, New Mexico State is a bad team. They're actually, to me, a poor man's Idaho. I think they're going to be able to score points. The problem is they're not going to be able to stop anyone. You look at last year, Drew. I mean, 121st in the country defensively. They gave up 32 plays of 30 yards or more. That's awful. It's hard to imagine that many big plays. Larry Rose will commit some as well. I think they're going to be an over machine. They were an over machine the last couple of years. I don't see it stopping this year. And they actually have a commanding offense for once. Rogers is a pretty good quarterback if he can actually stay out of the slammer and off the training table. And Larry Rose is a guy that I I want in my backfield. So for me, I'm going to say high scoring, take overs with New Mexico State. They might be a team, Drew, that I just keep rolling overs every week.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see where the market prices them. I mean, they got at Arizona State to start off the season and then at New Mexico.
Those two games to start the season, total will be close to 75-80. Those are two teams. I mean, New Mexico State should be a high-scoring game. Arizona State will be a crazy one. They're going to have some high-scoring games for sure.
Yeah, even the Troy game. I mean, the first three games are all going to be probably totaled definitely over 75. If they're not, I'll definitely be on the over. What about that September 23rd matchup against UTEP, the war on, what is it called, the war on I-10?
Yeah, I think UTEP's obviously going to have some trouble without Aaron Jones this year. They're going to be what New Mexico State will be next year without Larry Rose. You can't really make up what Aaron Jones did. I mean, Aaron Jones is in the NFL now with the Green Bay Packers. I don't know how it will be from a perspective. This might be a chance that New Mexico State could be a bet on. I mean, for once, Drew, they finally have some sort of semblance offensively. They have the ability to move the football. That wasn't something we could say with this group a year or two ago. They had trouble moving the football. Larry Rose was injured. Rodgers had problems. For once, they're finally healthy and ready to go. So I think they're going to be more of a bet-on team against bad teams, against the UTEP, against, a Georgia State. So for me, they might be a team that I might be a little bit more interested in betting on against these bad teams.
Yeah, I was actually surprised you came off as saying they won't make a bowl game for sure. When you look down their schedule, I know they haven't made a bowl game since, 1960. But as they head into independent life, therefore likely not making a bowl game anytime soon, with that quarterback running back situation, and they actually came on a bit late last year. So I think they could surprise some people, at least get to 4, 5, 6 wins.
But the problem, Drew, when you have a bowl team that you're wondering if they can win and get to 5 or 6 wins, do they have guaranteed wins on their schedule? And there's no Southeast Missouri State on the schedule. There's no, Texas Pan American on this. There's none of those games here. So, unfortunately, I don't know that you necessarily have a guaranteed win here. I mean, should you beat Texas State? Yes, but you don't even have UL Monroe on the schedule. And you look at their team total at 3.5. Markets are saying they're going to be a 4 or 5 win team. So for me, I would definitely go under.
You're right. Good point. They don't have ULM and they don't have Coastal Carolina. So even though
they don't have guarantee game either. They don't have, Hampton. They don't have Morgan State. They don't have those games. So they're going to have to try to find wins. And I'm not sure that they're going to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to South Alabama USA, the Jaguars. Last year they started off the season beating at Mississippi State and coming out with a win. They're going to now have to do it in Oxford. They're going at Mississippi, following up with Oklahoma State at home. So likely going to be 0-2 out of the gate, although, you never know with this team. They have recruited well. I think Dallas Davis, a good dual threat quarterback. He knows the system, and Joey Jones' 9th year here. He's the coach that pretty much built this program. And they've made a couple bowl games, 2014 and last year. They played Air Force. But overall, last year went 6-7. How do you see them faring this year, Jeff?
Yeah, they've been a weird team, South Alabama. They've struggled in this conference, but they've done some really good things in a non-conference. They beat San Diego State 2 years in a row. They also beat Mississippi State last year. Problem here, Drew, this year is they're not going to do that. They're not going to beat Oklahoma State. I don't think they're going to beat Ole Miss. And I don't think they're going to beat La Tech either. So you're not going to have the ability to fall back and say, well, we did beat Mississippi State, and we went 500 in our conference. I don't know that they're going to be able to do that. I do like Dallas Davis. I do like what they do offensively, but they did lose Gerald Everett, a guy that I thought was an NFL player. He's in the NFL now. You don't have that safety blanket anymore. But they were a good defensive team, Drew. One thing you have to point out, last year, top 25 in third down defense. They're going to be able to be pretty good defensively, but you're not going to have, unless you can win these games, it's going to be hard to think they're going to go in and have the year that they had last year in the non-conference. It's just not something that I see happening. They're another team that is just very blah. I don't really have much for them. I would venture to say that I think they're a 4 or 5 win team. Not a ton of value for me with them.
Yeah, when you look at their out of conference, Oklahoma State, Mississippi, and Louisiana Tech, they didn't do themselves any favors as far as wins go out of conference. But their quarterback running back situation with Xavier Johnson and Dallas Davis, it's one of the more sleeper combos in the Sunbelt Conference. Looking down their schedule, one game that I did circle, well, two actually, that at Troy game, it's on a Wednesday night. I'm guessing it's a standalone game. That will be an exciting one. But the betting-wise, it looks like they host ULM and then have to travel to Georgia State on a Thursday night. That's going to be a short turnaround there, and they're on the road. So that's one that I may look to fade USA in that one. But anything left on the Jags?
Yeah, the thing, Drew, that I want to say about USA, and I don't take anything away from what they did. I mean, winning the games that they did was impressive last year. But let's be real. I mean, San Diego State played probably their worst game of the season against South Alabama, and Mississippi State basically handed them the game. So I'm not sure from a luck factor it's good they're going to be as lucky this year. They're a team that I'm going to look to definitely bet against. They didn't do themselves any favors, and I think they got a little cocky setting that schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a tough out-of-conference schedule. But
don't really understand it if I'm Joey Jones. I don't get why you're doing that. Don't really get it.
So, big man, if you had to say the worst team in Division I football at the FBS level, who are you saying?
I think I know where you're going with this question. You think it's Texas State?
You could definitely make the argument.
No, you very well can. I actually wrote that down here. Drew, I got to be honest. I think UMass is really bad. I think Louisiana Monroe is very bad. Texas State's right there, though. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Everett Withers in his second year here, a 2-10 season. How are you going to look to bet the Bobcats this year, big man?
Well, I'm probably going to look to bet against them for the most part. I will say this, Drew. One thing that has me kind of interested is what are you going to get out of Damian Williams from Mississippi State? Obviously, he kind of was the odd man out when Nick Fitzgerald kind of turned himself into a player, but I saw some decent things with him, honestly. But they have no run game. They're hideous defense. And they're very possibly, like you said, the worst team in the country. The only winnable game I see is Houston Baptist. They're an underdog in every other game. And they have a tough schedule. I mean, you got to go to Colorado. UTSA is a better team. Wyoming's a good team. I think they can beat UL Monroe. I really do. I'm really low on them. I think they're a 1 or 2 win team. Everett Withers is going to have another tough year. Dennis Francione really set this team back, honestly. And you don't have Tyler Jones to fall back on. You could be looking at the worst team in the country in Texas State.
Yeah, and you mentioned it as well. They got at Colorado, at Wyoming, out of conference. I guess they only have one bye week as well, so they're already down on. What's that?
No, I just wanted to say to kind of go off your point there. I know certain people aren't big fans of win totals and even low win totals. I know you've mentioned you're not a big fan, but I got to be honest, Drew, at 2.5, I really can't see them winning 3 games. I don't see where you have that on the schedule, honestly.
No, I'm not a fan of going under on low totals like that. I did it with Kansas a couple years ago at 1.5 in a cash. They only won 1 game. So,
oh, sure.
Yeah.
I was on that as well. They didn't win any games, I don't believe. But yeah, look, you look at last year. They had 2 wins. One was in the first week against Ohio, a game that I think if they played 9 other times, they'd lose all 9. They beat Incarnate Word. They beat the Cardinals of Incarnate Word. So again, not really sure that they're going to win 3 games. This would definitely be in my win total arsenal here. They're not winning 3 games. So for me, under 2.5 is one of my favorites of the show here.
Yeah, and an interesting story on Texas State. I guess, where is it? It's in San Marcos, Texas, and supposedly that's like a big party town that you wouldn't really know, and it has a river kind of running through it or something. So a lot of the old football players would float down the river and drink. So that's why kind of all of the issues have happened here with Everett Withers. I know as far as scholarship players go, they're way down. So especially late in the season, looks like they got Arkansas State and Troy, back-to-back road games. Watch out. Those are going to be lofty losses there for Texas State. But anything left on the Bobcats before we move on, Jeff?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually didn't know this, but in 2013, it was voted ninth in the most exciting small cities in America, which is interesting. But yes, the river flowing through. I'd imagine, I don't go in water like this, but I'd imagine it'd be nice, jump on a tube, grab a beer. I'm not a big fan of swimming in public places, but I'd admit on a Saturday might be a little nice thing to do in San Marcos. Football would not be on my mind here, and I don't think it's going to be on the minds of many other inhabitants either.
Yeah, it's interesting. Interesting things like that. Sometimes you can use in the handicapping world. But let's get back to
Drew.
Yeah,
Drew, you want really quick 1 minute? When I was a young lad, when I drank, I don't drink anymore, but when I was younger, I used to DJ. I DJed a club in my area for a long time, and I remember the height of my drinking. I remember at 1:30 in the morning, I was actually on AccuWeather looking at San Marcos, Texas weather because I'd bet on a Texas State game. I looked at my phone and I said, what am I doing? I'm actually betting on Texas State football. This was before I was I was on SBR and things like that, but I always remember that. And I had Texas State at San Marcos in my AccuWeather saved weather searches forever. I looked at it weeks later and I'm like, why the fuck was I looking at this? And then I'm thinking, oh, right. I was drunk the other night, looked this up probably.
Nice, man. So you don't drink anymore, big man?
No, I haven't drank in years. It's not from anything that it's just I don't really do anything other than gambling. I feel like gambling is my one vice, and I don't want to add to that. I haven't drank in years, so I just don't really like it, to be honest.
No, congrats, man. That's good self-discipline. But on to the Troy Trojans, a more relevant Sunbelt team, a team that I would bet on will be in a bowl game. They finished 10-3 last year. Neil Brown in his third year here. We know him from the OC at Texas Tech and also the offensive coordinator for Kentucky. He actually went to Kentucky. I believe that's his alma mater, but he's got a really good quarterback in Brandon Silvers. And this team can really move the ball. They can go up and down the field. They got a tough one at Boise State week 1. Other than that, I think that this team, outside of the at LSU game, I wouldn't be surprised if they run the table until that last game at Arkansas State. So I see the Trojans having a really good year this year, big man. Are you with me?
Yeah, I totally agree with you here, Drew, on Troy. I think they're going to be one of the sleepers in this division to possibly win this one. Silvers, I think, needs to make a couple tweaks, but overall he's very good last year. Jordan Chun is a really good running back, and Emmanuel Thompson might be one of the better receivers in this conference. The concern I have with Troy, Drew, lost Antonio Garcia, one of their better offensive linemen. They're going to need to plug and play with the line, but overall, very good offensively. I think they're really good defense as well. Led the Sunbelt in rush defense and takeaways. And Drew, if I asked you, who played the best defensively against Deshaun Watson, I don't know that you would guess Troy. He had his worst stat game against Troy last year. They were very good against him. They're going to do some good things. They also avoid Appalachian State. They're a team that I'm going to bet on and possibly look to win this conference. I really like the Trojans this year.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't have known that. Didn't he have another bad game, maybe the first game of the year? That was against Auburn?
Yeah, he wasn't particularly good against NC State, but against Troy he really struggled. And like I said, worst statistical game of his season. So they did some really good things defensively. Good run defense, a good secondary. Overall, they had a really good year. 21st in scoring defense last year. So definitely Neil Brown did some good things. I like this team. I think they're the second best team in this conference, and I think they're going to challenge to beat App State.
Yeah, I do too. And they don't play App State, which is kind of a bummer. Their bye weeks are spread out nicely, and also their away games are spread out nicely. No back-to-back away games. And they start off week 1 at Boise State, so a little bit extra time for that travel spot. And then they come back home for Alabama State, so not really a kind of a hangover game after that. But do you like them there week 1 against Boise?
I'll tell you what, I'm going to look more into it for sure. I'm going to tell you, Drew, I'm going to look at them against LSU. I'm really interested in seeing how they're going to play in that game. They played well last year against Clemson. They don't have any game after that. Their bye weeks after that game. They're going to circle that game They're a team that can go in like App State and really give a Power 5 team some trouble. I think they have a good quarterback and a good defense, and those are guys and teams that I want to bet on. I'm going to definitely look at them in that game against LSU. I'll be interested to see what that line is in that game.
Okay, and we got the Warhawks on deck. Anything left from BMOC on the Trojans?
They're going to be a team that I would look to bet on to win this conference. You're going to get a pretty good number on them. I definitely think a lot of people will look at App State and say, they're my team. But to me, I want the experience of Troy. I like what they did last year in some big games. I like Troy. Okay,
well, we got the ULM Warhawks, last and possibly least in the Sunbelt. We got Matt Viator in his second year here. He came over from McNeese State at the FCS level. He actually had success there, big man. But looks like ULM, he has not had success yet. They had some quarterback injury issues, really injury issues all over the field last year. They're out-of-conference schedule at Memphis, at Florida State, Southern Miss, at Louisiana, likely a 0-4 start for the Warhawks before they actually have a competitively lined game anyway. So what are you thinking? ULM Warhawks over or under 3.5 wins this year?
Under. I think they're a team that will challenge to be one of the worst teams in the country. I really believe that. I think Viator should have stayed at McNeese State. This is going to be a dreadful team. I mean, they're a total sieve on defense. They're one of the worst rush defenses in the country last year. And, you know, at least with, like, Texas State, you have a guy that played at an SEC program. I mean, Garrett Smith has been dreadful. I mean, totally bad. And you look at this schedule. I mean, early on, you got to go to Auburn, Memphis, Florida State, Southern Miss. What is that schedule? I mean, that's like NFL teams. If you're, they have one win on the schedule. It's Texas State. That's up. This team blows in my. Yeah.
Okay, they came on a little bit at the end of last year, beating USA and Georgia State before losing to App State and Louisiana. So that's maybe one positive for them. But I actually like this team a little bit, big man. ULM, Matt Viator, you know, he did a great job at McNeese State. He's kind of turning around here at ULM. I'll give you the positive outlook. They got Garrett Smith. He's coming back for his junior season. He's really been banged up every year he's been playing for the Warhawks. And the backup, Caleb Evans, he's an athletic dude, a really big guy. I think that he can come in and be a spark plug as well. You're right that the schedule, especially out of conference, is very tough. But they got Coastal Carolina, they got Texas State. I think Georgia State is a winnable game. Idaho is going to be tough, but I think that they can get 4 wins this year. They got 4 wins last year.
They may have the daunting problem. You remember last year, Drew, with Rutgers, they were outscored like 200-0 in their first 4 games. UL Monroe could do that this year. I mean, you look at the first 3 games. I mean, they're going to get absolutely crushed.
Yeah, they are. There's no doubt about that. But maybe circle that.
I'm not high on Garrett Smith. I haven't seen much to make myself interested in him. And you know, defensively, there is their big problem. They're not very good. They don't force turnovers. One of the worst teams in the country last year forcing turnovers. They're going to be bad. But again, I hear you. They could surprise, but don't forget, Drew. Last 3 games of the season. App State, at Auburn, and Arkansas State. I mean, find 4 wins on this schedule. I don't see them.
Coastal Carolina, Texas State, Georgia State, USA, Idaho are possible wins.
I don't think they're better than any of those teams other than maybe Texas State. I mean, Drew, how are they better than Idaho? I don't see it. I think I'd take Damian Williams over Garrett Smith.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're better than Idaho. I'm just saying possible winning games. I would say they're better than Coastal Carolina. They're better than Texas State.
This?
What's that?
We obviously know. How about this? We obviously know we're going to see each other at some point, and I'm going to think it's probably going to be after. I'll see you again after the season. How about we bet a dinner at the place of your choice that they don't win more than. I'll take the under 3 games. How about that?
So 3 games. 3 games is a push, and if they win 4 games, then dinner's on you.
Dinner's on me. You can We can go to the most expensive restaurant in Costa Rica. I don't care. They are not winning 4 games. No way.
All right. Well, bet's on. I guess I'll take the over 3 wins for ULM. You got the under, and that's a good way to end this show, big man.
That'd be great. Yeah, for me, quickly, I'll just throw a couple out. I like ULM under 3.5. I like Texas State under 2.5. And I'm very high on App State and Troy.
Yeah, App State and Troy, absolutely. I like Arkansas State as well. I know a lot of people aren't on them, but other than that, I think that does it for the Sunbelt preview. We'll be back, next week, big man, with Conference USA?
Yeah, we'll be doing plenty of conference breakdowns. We also are roundtables, Drew. We throw in those, some of the big conferences as well. Looking forward to football this year at SBR Forum.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, big man, and we'll be back next week with the Conference USA Campus Connection. I'm Drew Martin, your host. He's big man on campus, Jeff Nadeau. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to our channel. Now, we've put a lot of work into producing all these free videos, so please help us out and keep all our content free for you forever by simply liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Now, not to mention, a visit to our industry-leading website will warm the hearts of all our SBR employees, especially myself. Now, the links are over there to the left, so do check those out. Thanks for watching.